Hi, and welcome to Two CPAs in the Mic, the podcast where we talk tax, finance, and all things related to business. Whether you're a business owner, working professional, or someone who wants to start a career in accounting, this is the podcast for you. Hosted by CCK Strategies partners Jeff Frable and Sara Mays, we dive into relevant business and tax matters with working professionals to make these topics less intimidating, relatable, and dare we say fun? Let's get down to business.
Welcome back to another episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. We cover relevant business, tax, and accounting topics. We do it with straight talk, some unexpected humor, and mostly practical information without all the jargon and stuffiness known to come with the CPA profession. So today, our episode is going to focus on commercial real estate. We're going to talk about why it's so complicated, what makes it special, and sometimes what makes it very sexy. So much more sexier than residential real estate. But we have a professional in the house today. We're going to talk about the difference between commercial real estate and property management and residential real estate. But we're also going to talk about trends in real estate. And so we hope that you find some value with what our topic is today. Again, my name is Jeff Frable. I've been a partner at CCK for 20 years, and I have my trusty co-host with me today.
Hey, I'm Sara Mays. I'm also a partner here at CCK. I've been here for 18 years. And also with us today, we have Christy Porter in the house.
Good morning. Good morning.
Our trusted internal on-the-air producer. She keeps us on the straight and narrow, making sure that everything that we say
is on brand,
goes on brand, and is in line for our listeners. But we're very excited today to have one of our friends, I would say, Matt Mardis with Payne and Associates. Matt, we've known each other for many, many years. One of the things that I'm a huge believer in divine appointments and God connecting the dots. And I love how he has connected our dots. It started years and years ago with becoming introduced to Craig Payne, who was the founder of your organization. And Craig has a son, Brian. And Brian's much younger than I am, but I got to know Brian through his dad. And then we got to know you. And now we are business partners in some ventures, and we sit side by side at the ORU basketball game.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
he sits side by side. He never shows up, but he's always too busy.
Hey, also, can I interject? When I started at CCK, Frable, this was one of the very first clients you introduced me to, were the Paynes and Matt.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. That goes way back. So we have those dots connected, Matt. We asked you to be on because you are an expert in this area. But as we get started, tell everybody, who is Matt Mardis? Why should they listen to you? I mean, and also just tell us a little bit about your journey with Payne and what you guys do in the community.
Sure. Happy to be here with you all. And CCK's been a great partner for us for a long time, I think going on almost 20 years. So wow. I'm a commercial real estate broker, developer, principal with Payne and Associates, father of four. And I started in the industry as a broker with, as you mentioned, Craig Payne, and he founded the firm. And Brian Payne and I played college basketball together. So that's what brought me
I didn't know that
to
we're at
Campbell University in North Carolina. Okay. And I went...
Campbell Camels.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. Impressive.
It's impressive.
Christy knows her b-ball.
That is impressive. Not many people in this part of the country know that.
Did you say camels?
Yep.
What do you do? Like spit at people just as a... Yeah.
You had to go there.
Okay. Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
okay.
you had to go there.
You're taking time away from Matt.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Matt.
We actually had a real camel, Jeff, as a mascot that would come on and we
Shut up.
That is
This is
awesome.
by far my favorite episode already.
Yes.
All right. So this is why they should listen to you. Our listeners should listen to you. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
So preceding that, after that, I went on to coach college basketball for 9 years at Kansas State and Indiana State, and then decided for a career change. And Craig Payne was kind enough to bring us to Tulsa and started a whole new career. Didn't know much about commercial real estate. That was 19 years ago. And our company now has certainly evolved from a brokerage company that we started primarily specializing in retail, shopping center assemblage, and tenant representation. Now we really have three main business lines. We have the brokerage company, Payne and Associates. We have Payne Property Management. We manage over 2 million square feet of commercial property. And we have Lead Capital, which is our investment vehicle that we syndicate, joint venture partnerships like you're a part of on some of our ventures. So it's a very dynamic business. It's ever evolving, has evolved a lot more post-COVID, I would say. So love to get into it, answer any questions, and excited to be here.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were a college basketball coach. And if I remember right, League Capital kind of started off with somewhat of a niche of working with those that played basketball, bringing them in as investors in different projects and things like that, right? Are you still doing some of that?
Yes, we still do. We have longtime partners that are still actively coaching or some professional athletes. And yeah, we kind of started it from the standpoint, in that business, it's very volatile. So folks change jobs frequently, sometimes unexpectedly. And
sometimes they have some money in their pocket after that unexpected change happens, right?
Yeah. So it was something we wanted to start to kind of provide passive income. And it's been pretty successful. We have a lot of different partners, and we've got multiple projects in the pipeline right now. And so, yeah, you're right. That was the impetus for us starting League Capital.
Yeah, so it's a nice way for you to blend some of your passions with your new professions and things of that nature. So,
absolutely.
Well, let's get into this and just kind of really start at we talked briefly before we got on about how we're really trying to do this from a different perspective. We don't want to get caught up in all the jargon and all the specifics and the details and the weeds. We really want to look at this at a high level and just give really good information. So just at a high level, what is commercial real estate? I mean, it seems like a pretty easy question, and you don't need to get into all the details, but what is it? How's it different than residential, just in the way it operates and things of that nature? And what kind of drew you to that niche?
So what is commercial real estate? Well, I guess the broadest explanation to me would be it's real estate. You have 4 major food groups, right? You have industrial.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yep.
Retail, multifamily, and office. And so those are basically your 4 major food groups of commercial real estate by sector. Total addressable market, I think, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $26 trillion in the United States only.
Right.
So it's a very big market. And there are a lot of various niches within each sector. We happen to specialize in retail and office, also an investor in industrial, but each sector has its own need, in different communities, and those needs evolve. So it's a very dynamic market. It's very different than residential. I've never sold a house except my own. The laws are different. And I would say the biggest distinction between commercial real estate and residential real estate is it's much less emotional, right? So when you don't reside at the place usually that you're developing. And so it's more of a financial numbers game, so to speak, supply and demand based, and just have a lot of respect for what residential realtors do. I couldn't do it. But it's, 2 different businesses for sure.
Mm-hmm. So what were those 4 groups again? You said retail?
Multifamily, retail, industrial, and office.
So the multifamily is like duplexes, and not maybe duplexes, but apartments and things like that.
Yeah, apartments.
Okay.
So large scale down to 4 to 6 plexes, up to 600 unit complexes. And I'm not sure which one is largest. I would say the multifamily, probably from a capitalization standpoint, is probably the largest of the 4 food groups, just in terms of dollar value.
Okay.
It's a necessity-based product, right? Folks need places to live. And then retail, which we specialize in, which is a little more sexy, is your shopping centers, your mixed use, your high street retail, and then, industrial, which has really been one of the favorite asset classes, I'd say, over the last 3 years, COVID, and that has been warehouses, data centers, those types of things on the industrial side, and then office, which, as we sit here, and one of our assets that we joint ventured, and traditional office, but those are all within those. You can break them down into different subsectors, et cetera. We don't need to get into that today, but
Well, I'm glad you brought up the groups, because that was one thing I was going to ask you is what are the different branches out of commercial real estate? And so you've addressed that. And I would imagine with these groups that we're talking about, we're dealing with purchasing as well as leasing. Either way, you know, if you had an entrepreneurial business owner, it's a matter, do you want to buy something, you could broker that deal, or do you want to lease something, you can broker that deal. So it's both of those things.
Yeah, all scenarios. And within that, actually, you have certain firms that just do investment sales. They do no leasing. They just do investment sales. You have some firms that just do property management. We're a little bit of a hybrid. We're more kind of a boutique firm, relationship based. So we kind of have the bandwidth or capability to take on strategic assignments as we see fit for our clients. We don't do any multifamily right now, so that's probably one of the food groups we aren't active in. We're contemplating a mixed use project, which you bring in retail and multifamily together.
Okay,
but yeah, it's within each sector. You know, you have brokers that just do industrial, and it's really hard to be an expert in everything. So our team, we each have our own individual specialty, and similar to tax, I would imagine, to where you have international tax specialists at CCK, or you have certain specialists here within your firm that deal with different kinds of businesses, oil and gas, or so very similar in commercial real estate.
Jeff,
So
can I ask a question?
you go for it.
A lot of times in economic development, you can kind of read a community or a region by commercial real estate. And each region has its own desire, its appetite. I lived in a market where it was impossible. Everyone needed 5,000 square feet. They needed a truck bay, and it was just hard. It was because of the industry clusters that were really driving the economy. What is it in Tulsa? What is it specifically that's driving that right now? Because we're not manufacturing is big, but I don't see us being massive distribution hubs either. So for our audience, I think it helps anyone outside of Tulsa and even in Tulsa, what's happening right now locally?
That's a great question, and I'll try to put my finger on it as best I can. You know, in our focus practice group of retail, it tracks residential. So I track those stats pretty closely.
Yeah, because it's followed by retail and rooftops.
You got
right.
it. So this is the first time, 2024, in 25 years, I think, that Oklahoma had net immigration from Texas and California. And so you've seen some of that net immigration, and they're coming here because of jobs, right? Lower cost of living. But that was really a very interesting stat. We do some work. I spoke at the NAIOP trends this year. And so I had done a lot of research, and CoStar, who provides all the GDP data for the government, going through their numbers, it was very telling. I mean, there's something going on in Oklahoma very positively. I think it's a pro-business post-COVID to see these numbers. And we're seeing growth that we've never seen since I've lived here in 20 years, which means the retailers are following that. So they track the same data that we track. We're getting ready to kick off a $70 million ground-up project in Broken Arrow. Meta's doing a $100 million data center. So there's a lot of positive factors. I think the economy here is pretty diverse, with aerospace, oil and gas, obviously, cybersecurity. So there's a lot of different factors. We do have skilled manufacturing. The American Airlines base is a major employer. Healthcare is a major draw for this region. And I think what you'll see, you know, from, say, Northwest Arkansas to Tulsa to Oklahoma City, that entire corridor is really starting to grow. Oklahoma has water, and they have low cost of power. And so those are things that industries are looking for in a favorable taxation and business climate.
Big. I mean, water, land, the basic infrastructures, which we take for granted, I think, is not the norm. That's not the norm. So it's a huge economic driver for our entire region. Again, going back to commercial real estate, you guys, you can ask someone and you learn an awful lot in about 5 minutes. Yeah.
I mean, I already have.
So talking about these trends, and we have listeners that are worldwide, I hope. Anyway, we probably
aunt in Vancouver.
My aunt in Vancouver. Matt, we have tens of listeners, I think, and they all are part of CCK. But For those that are outside of Oklahoma, I mean, sometime we probably ought to talk about this because we live in a bubble in Oklahoma. We're pretty isolated. It takes things a while to get to us, whether they're on the left or west coast or east or west coast. So what are some things going on like nationally that you're hearing in your profession that are not necessarily in Oklahoma, but things that are being experienced in other sections of the nation?
I think the trend nationally is to densify, right? You're having to go vertical because of the cost of capital. So the development cycle, if you just take it, it doesn't really matter what sector, is probably down 60% over the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. So when the cost of capital essentially doubled, right, with the interest rates, that basically pressed a pause on the development cycle. And so you're having to get more efficient with your projects. You know, you saw probably 37% inflation in the cost of goods that go into a project, you know, post-COVID over a 3-year period. And so when you have 37% inflation and the cost of capital doubled, well, eventually you're going to have to see rising rents. And so I think the rents are finally starting to catch up. But that's certainly a trend is, you know, it was a lot less challenging when interest rates were where they were to put a project together. But this year, I think you'll start to see some additional projects come online. And a big trend is readjustment of square footage. So it doesn't matter if it's in the office sector, you'll see if you had a 40,000 square foot footprint, you may be going to a Class A building in 24,000 square feet. So
what does that mean?
So if you had a full floor that was 40,000, so it means your offices get smaller.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go. Thank you.
Well, you also used a term there, Class A. Talk just a little bit about what Class A is compared to Class B or C.
Yes. So particularly in office, in the Class A, B, C acronym kind of applies to every food group, but we'll just use office as an example because it's Class A would mean upgraded finishes.
So it's like pristine, like the best of the best?
Amenities?
The amenity package or the location. Do they reinvest in the property? Does it have certain things that you look for? And then, you know, industrial, they might have Class A defined as what is the material that it's made by? Is it close to rail? How new is the product? And it's a little bit subjective, you know, and the market kind of dictates that. But you've seen a flight to quality, especially in the office sector, into Class A over the last, you know, since COVID. Efficiency matters, right? You know, a lot of the Class A buildings, and for instance, when we acquired Geophysical, we upgraded all the parking lot lighting, all of the common areas, all the restrooms, but those are ongoing upgrades that you have to make into your property. So it's a little subjective, but you can definitely tell the difference between a Class A and a Class C.
Is there a difference between efficiency and sustainability?
I think those go hand in hand.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in order to be more sustainable, you need to be more efficient. And so we have 20 employees on the property management side, and some of our key employees are our building engineers who are, you know, they have different classes of building engineers, but when you start to get into boiler chiller and when to bring the building temp up, et cetera, and solar and all of those things, I think you'll start to see that become more popular in Oklahoma. It hasn't really taken off yet because our cost of electricity is fairly low relative to the rest of the country, but I think you'll start to see more sustainability get interwoven into projects in Oklahoma. Great question.
When you were talking about the classes being somewhat subjective, the comment I was going to make is we've all walked into those office buildings where you get in the elevator and it smells just musty, or I would assume those are Class C. You just go, how old is this place? Right. Yeah, I could see the subjectivity to that comes into play as well. But Matt, I want to get into something here because I want to get into a little bit of detail. One of the things I know and respect about you guys is what I'm calling the art of the deal. You have this talent, ability, niche, whatever you want to call it, to see what something could be, put that all together, get investors, and get it done. So, for example, our office building, you mentioned Geophysical. This one building had been around for years. They added a second building. After a number of years of being in this building, it went up for sale. The campus went up for sale, and we ended up purchasing it as a tenant group. But you were involved in some pretty big deals. And so talk a little bit about how that starts to get initiated. What do you go through? I know you mentioned there's a big deal that you just closed a week or so ago, $70 million deal. That doesn't happen overnight.
I was going to say, what's the longevity?
So just kind of walk us through what that.
And what's your patience level?
And risk level and all that kind of, I mean, that's the part I really respect. So just kind of talk a little bit about that process.
Oh, that's interesting process. Yeah, it's that particular project has taken 5 years, kind of from the idea, and it's not even built yet, right? It'll take another 14 months to actually physically construct it. And our partner, Parks Development Group out of Nashville, they do a great job of that. But for us, and this goes back to Craig Payne, honestly, it starts with the land, the site, right? And so if you don't have the proper site or location or market presence within the market, the rest of it to us is kind of irrelevant.
Let me just jump in here real quick if I can, because you brought up Craig. And correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but this is what my understanding is. And this won't mean a lot to people outside of Tulsa, but anybody inside Tulsa knows Tulsa Hills. Craig did not develop Tulsa Hills, but he was part of that development, right?
Correct.
And he was more instrumental in developing. There was a section south of Tulsa Hills that is kind of part of Tulsa Hills.
Right.
That he was, I mean,
South of 81st.
Yeah, that was the part that he really got involved in, really, is my understanding.
Yeah, well, he had really assembled the entire 100 acres. That was the first project I worked on when I came to town.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was a phenomenal project. I think the market didn't understand what was west of the river. And so
it's all about the land, is what you're saying.
And it really, if you take this asset and where we sit, we're not out there looking to acquire office buildings. That is not. But when this property came to market, the intersection and the land that sits beneath this site is kind of irreplaceable in this market, right? And so that's where we start. And a lot of times in the retail world, you identify trends. And in the last project, we have a lot of software that we use. We have AI software that tracks cell phone data and customer habits. We track demographics. And so you have to be able to understand that data and then kind of project out what you think the opportunity could be. If you take this Tulsa Premium Outlets, for instance, that was a $180 million project. So Simon hired us to represent them on where to put it. That took 10 years.
Long time.
Yeah. And so now it's an awesome project. It was the first project they've opened 100% leased ever in the history of their company.
That's amazing.
It's doing 2 times above projections. And we were all a little surprised on the sales volume, but that site sits right next to a major metro. So not to get too into the weeds on the detail of site selection. I mean, we do site selection for a lot of national companies, and every tenant has a little bit different model or customer base that they go after. So Planet Fitnesses is different from Aldi, which is different from Costco. And so on the retail side, sometimes you'll get an assignment, right? Like I may get an assignment from Aldi and they say, okay, we're going to go to Claremore. Go find us the best 3 options in Claremore, Oklahoma, or what have you. So, but there is a little bit of an art to the site selection side. And you really have to physically go there and drive the market. You can't get you can get all the demographics from Google Earth, but unless you go and drive it from the customer standpoint, is kind of how I do it.
Right.
You guys, I'm hearing a theme. You can have all the data. You can have the demographics. You have the psychographics. You can have all that. But it's the relationships. People are contacting you because of who you are. Going back to what you said about Mr. Payne, I mean, going way back, land development doesn't just start because you have investment and you have the resources. It's about the heart behind the land. And that, to me, is relationship.
That's a great point. No, it is a relationship. Real estate's like a lot of businesses. It's a relationship business, and it's really a local business. We've done deals across the country. We did a deal in New York, but you really need that local presence who has those relationships if you're going to do anything of scale in that market, who has that local market knowledge and knows who the players are in the market, who the public officials are in the market. And so that's a great point. It truly is a relationship business, and one that's kind of hard to break into, frankly.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's not only the relationship and the picking of the selection sites and all that kind of stuff, but the relationship you have with your investors. I know if Matt calls me and says, hey, I got a deal you might be interested in. Now listen to me. I sound like a big investor. I mean,
He
is. I always.
This is kind of a big deal if anyone doesn't know that.
I think there's a commode in the ladies' room in the second floor of the other building that I kind of own. It's really how much I invest. But you deal with individuals that invest millions with you. And there's a high level of trust that goes, and that you're right. You can't just break into that. And that takes time to develop. And you've been doing this now how many years, Matt?
I think this is my 19th year.
Yeah. And so it all goes back to relationship. And I mean, that's what we stand for at CCK. Is we were talking about that in a recent episode about it's not just a tax return. It's how are you impacting someone's life by what you're doing. And so I can only imagine you don't take those relationships for granted.
Oh, absolutely not. And it really dovetails to having the backing of CCK, honestly, so that our partners know that all the taxation matters are done correctly. That's invaluable. And, I come from I'm a son of a CPA. And so
that's what my son says. I'm the son of a CPA.
Son of a
preacher. Is there a song about that?
Son of a preacher.
Close. Yeah. But I think having you all as a partner, so they know that back end piece is accurate and very thoughtful. And, a lot of times we'll ask you all to consult with our investor partner and make sure that they're comfortable with essentially you all are our partner in the transaction. And so that transparency is big for us, reporting, and you guys play a big role in that. And I think you all have been a big part of us being able to, without question, when I tell a prospective investor who handles our books and accounting, when I say CCK, then that reputation speaks for itself.
We appreciate that. We've talked a little bit about property management, and that's a different beast than the commercial real estate. Talk a little bit about what you do there, what kind of problems you run into, and how that's different than the commercial real estate side.
Property management it's all things. It's customer facing, it's accounting, or bookkeeping rather. It's repairs and maintenance. It's all the stuff that no one thinks about until there's a problem. And so we've got a great Greg Mahaney's our COO of Payne Property Management. He and his brother Garrett kind of head that up for us. So we've just got a wonderful team. Most of our folks have been with us. I think we've had one leave out of 20. So we'd like to take care of our team, and we may pay a little above market, but it's also about the assets that you take on. So we're not out taking on any asset on the property management side. We try to stick to Class A, Class B assets or assets that we own. But that really made sense for us as we started to grow our own personal, portfolio to add that piece. And now we manage for others. And it's a daily grind, right? So the property management game is won in the margin, right? And so it's detail work. It's tedious. It's Saturdays. It's snow removal. Right. It's, all the things. And I think we've done a good job of hiring because we've got a really experienced team, and now we're starting to hire some younger folks to kind of mentor. And we've been fortunate to manage some assets that were highly coveted in this market, and we were able to land the accounts and competing with some very large national firms. Right. So,
is it just property management in the Tulsa area? Is it easier to stay local when you're managing properties?
For the most part, yeah. To have those vendors. I mean, if we were to acquire an asset in a different market, and we have owned assets in Oklahoma City and in other markets, but you really need scale if you're going to do it effectively. And we have that scale now. We continue to grow selectively the assets that we manage, but it's a totally different, the mentality between brokerage and development and management is completely different.
I can only imagine.
Because you're managing people.
Which hat am I on today? What do I wear right now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, Matt, again, we appreciate you. We see you as an expert and leader in this industry, in this market, and thankful that you could join us today. If someone's listening to this and they're like, man, that dude's got it going on, and maybe I need some wisdom and insight from him, or there's an entrepreneurial business owner that's looking to expand, grow, change, whatever, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think our information's on our website. It's payne-associates.com. Feel free to reach out, and excited to be here. This is a cool deal you all are doing and trying to reach a broader audience, and happy to be a part of it.
Well, it's about to get a little bit more cool for you. We're starting a tradition that a new segment that we've ripped off from others nationally. But Sara would like to do some rapid fire questions with you, if that's okay. So
yes, real easy, real light. You ready?
Ready.
Off the top of your head, apple, oranges, or bananas?
Oranges.
Ooh, good. What's the best sandwich?
Muffalata.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Muffalata?
I have no idea what that is.
Kasha bread loaded up, and then you squish it down, and it's
juicy,
heated deliciousness.
I just am so impressed with Matt Mardis and Christy Porter. I mean, gee whiz. Okay.
Yeah, that's Robert's favorite sandwich too.
Oh, good.
Yes. Okay, so this is interesting, and you can't pick basketball coach or anything with basketball. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Professional tennis player.
Couldn't get away from the athletics, could we? What's the scariest animal?
Leopard.
Nice. And last, what is your favorite word?
Conscientious.
Ooh, very
good word. Very
good
word.
Very good word.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
I would expect nothing less from someone like Matt Mardis.
Yes.
But, again, Matt, thank you for joining us today. For our listeners, whether you're an entrepreneurial business owner or just someone in the industry, we hope that you had some takeaways today from what Matt was talking about. I know I learned a lot. I think you did a really great job at keeping it at a pretty high level and giving us insight. I mean, we all drive around. We see these buildings, we see development, we see retail, we see all these things, but there is a relationship behind that. And there is a very smart group of individuals that have put that, and a lot of times put financial well-being on the line to make that happen.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yes.
And we just need to when you walk into the Costco, you need to understand that there's a lot of risk.
So much went into it.
Yeah, so much went into it. And so I think this has been great to hear all that. And for our listeners, if you want to connect with us, we would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, any comments, the bad ones go to Sara. I get the good ones. But if you want to reach out and connect with us, do so at podcast@cckcpa.com. That's podcast@cckcpa.com. As far as our thank yous, Sara, do you want to cover the thank yous?
Yes. Thank you so much to CCK Strategies, our sponsors, for just putting it all out there for us and letting us take the time to do the fun stuff for us. Thank you to Christy Porter for keeping it real, keeping us on the straight and narrow. Thank you to my husband, Robert, for doing all of the music. Thank you to Clarence with Tulsa Internet Marketing Services. Thank you so much for just doing all of the background stuff for us. It's amazing. And last but not least, thank you to Natalie Renfro for getting us out there and getting us into the world. So we thank you for that. And join us next time as we are two CPAs together, and you're going to find out who's next on the mic. The information provided on this podcast is for general informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute accounting, tax, legal, or financial advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations change and individual circumstances vary. Always consult with a qualified CPA or professional advisor before making any financial or business decisions. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organizations they are affiliated with. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-accountant relationship. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to those terms.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Have questions or ideas for a topic? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@cckcpa.com.